Happy Friday. We are going to do one of the very first 15-minute hot seats with my man, Scotty. And he typed, when he booked the hot seat, he asked two questions. One was, is there a process to clarify your brand? And number two was, what are my top favorite brands? Well, first of all, I want to introduce Scotty to the show. What's going on, Scotty?
Oh, I'm wonderful. I'm out here in Monroe, Washington, which is out by Seattle, and I've been following you for quite a while here, Henry, and I love what you do with the brands, and thought I would just hold my hand up and support the group today. And unfortunately, sometimes you hold your hand up, you get into these type of interesting situations. So it's all fun, though.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you've been a great supporter to the group, and I will say thank you for that. You're very active in the group. I like that you ask very thought-provoking questions. You challenge me, which I really like, and it keeps me out of my comfort zone. And so let's get into it. And I'm going to share with you actually a template of a client brief that we use with our clients to help them clarify their brand's message, their identity, the whole kit and caboodle. So let me share a screen real quick. And, feel free to take notes if you want. But this is our client brief. And I just have a thing with privacy. Like I don't want to use an actual client's brief, but this is the template that we actually fill in with them to help them clarify their brand before we get into any of the designing or the development of websites or anything like that. So can you see the screen, Scotty?
Yes, I can.
Okay, is it big enough for you? Do you need me to go a little bigger?
Oh, I'm great.
Okay, cool. So basically we start with a table of contents. We start with an introduction of exactly the client and what it is that we're trying to do, who they're trying to be, what they're trying to do, and who they're trying to do it for. We start to develop, key branding attributes for the client. So we like to pick 6 to play with. So we also look at our competitors in the industry and find out exactly, who we're up against. Kind of look at the language that they use and how they're trying to position themselves, and we ask ourselves, all right, well, how can I position myself a little bit better? And then we look at who are we designing for. So before we get into defining who our brand is, we need to know, who the hell are we going to help? Like, who do we want to help? And so we develop personas, and we break down the persona by their backstory and their objectives. And then we look at what their needs are. What are they struggling with? What are their desires? What are their wants? And when we clearly define what that is, then we can start to clarify our brand's messaging to match that, so that they look at us as relevant, as credible, as authoritative, and that's what's going to connect them to us. So moving forward, we want to look at our brand's tone, the features, the design. So here's parts of branding that sort of get lost or never seen by those that don't really know what branding is past the surface level. So we want to look at the brand's tone. We want to look at metaphors. We want to look at actions. And we want to, we basically want to look at the customer persona, the user, and find out what are they struggling with the most? What are their pain points? What are their weaknesses? And how can we help them, right? So looking at this stuff is super, super deep when it comes to defining what our brand's clarity should be. So we look at 4 things. We look at the story, we look at their demographic, we look at their goals and their objectives. And then we look at the needs, like what do they need in order to fulfill those goals? Okay? And then we create a solution. So what do we need to do to help them achieve their goals and accomplish their needs? And that's where we get really specific and clear on how to defining our brand, right? So here's a baby boomer, Dwayne Marks. You know, his backstory is he moved from New York to find work. He's hardworking, his blue collar values. His life has passed by quickly. He misses his family. Tragic when his wife passed. He distanced himself from his kids. So we go really, really deep here when it comes to defining that customer that we want to help. Again, we go into the demographics. He's 67, he's retired, 3 kids, 2 stepkids. So we get very, very specific, right? And then here's another customer avatar. Here's tech savvy Jasmine, and she follows the aspiring attribute. And we go into her backstory, goals, objectives, and needs, right? And so as I scroll down, here's one more. So we like to define at least 3 customers, 3 unique customers that we could help. And then we go in and go and work backwards. The other thing that we like to look at is what we love and what we hate as a brand. So looking at it from Scotty's brand, what does Scotty love? What does Scotty hate, right? So when we create this client brief, these are all placeholders here as far as images go, but we'll put things, we'll put websites, we'll start to create a little bit of a storyboard here or an image board here on what Scotty loves, right? We'll also create an image board of what Scotty hates. And so that clear line is drawn in the sand. I talked a lot this week about Rick Rubin and how he says great art divides the audience. And it's the same thing. Great brands divide the audience. And when you get really clear on what you love and what you hate, people will either love you for it or hate you for it. And that's fine. That's fine. But at least we know where we stand. Okay? And so what we do in the client brief is we actually list out what that our client's brand loves and what it actually hates. And so that it's very, very clear, right? And then we also start to look at what the brand should look like. We start to get into voice. We start to get into brand attributes. And that's where we start to do some discovery. And so when we look at the 6 pillars here, we look at our culture or what we want to create as a culture. We look at our users, our personas, the people that I was just talking about. We look at our personality, what we want our personality to reflect. And then we also look at the emotional and the qualitative value, what you want other people to feel. Because branding at the end of the day is that gut feeling of what they perceive your brand to be, right? And then the last but not least is how we tangibly help them. So do we help them save money, save time, so on and so forth. So it's a lot of brainstorming, right? So we do a lot of brainstorming. And then what we do is we highlight the key attributes out of them all. So I have a very systematic approach on how we do that. And it really defines and refines the brand, right? So then we go into some imagery here. So loving, seeking meaning, empathetic, harmony, inspiring, identify values. And then we get into the color schemes of things. And then here's where my design team comes in, because once they understand everything that we just spoke about, then they start to develop the color scheme that matches inspiration, love, meaning seeking, empathy, value identification. right? And then we start to look at key typography that will allow them to make sure that the brand's image is consistent to the values up above. So we develop all of this in the brief, and then we create our design direction. So we go into now sort of the building and design of those attributes. So here's where we start to storyboard what we can potentially have the brand looking like, and then why. So this particular brand as an example, and again, this is a fictitious brand, but we're trying to define bold utility. So we're showing examples of that in this brief. And then we want the direction number 2 is your friendly guide. So we start to storyboard some imagery of that, right? A lot of this imagery here, like this person coming out of the screen, helping hand, being the guide, not the hero type of imagery. And then here's kind of where we develop our value proposition, and we kind of use this template as a way to establish that. And then here's where we start to sort of scrapbook and create different types of imagery that relay the messages up above, right? And so that is what we do in regards to the process of trying to clarify someone's brand from the bottom up. So was it helpful? Do you understand that it's not just a logo?
Well, I always understood branding's a lot more, but you get a lot of so-called branding experts, and they just scratch the surface. I didn't realize that your process of what you do is so in-depth that you not only look at the brand, but you look at the person behind it. And that's actually something I don't think a lot of people really do. They don't take into consideration a person's actual meaning themselves, who they really are. And that's really what the important thing that I was taught is branding yourself first is really important. And you actually consider that. And that's different than what I see a lot of people. They just look at, well, what are you trying to market? And how are we going to create a brand upon that? And unfortunately, if you lose your business, then you've got no brand because you never included yourself.
Boom. And that's a key takeaway right there, my friend. It's really understanding who you are and who you want to serve. Listen, at the end of the day, I want to be able to help as many people as I can, but I understand it's almost impossible. Like, how do you do that? So you really got to define yourself as to, all right, here's what I stand for. Here's me. You either going to resonate with that or you're not. And it is what it is. And I think that's what people are really attracted to, because if it's just like, if you're just out there trying to appease and please, people don't appreciate that. They just don't. And so we need, go ahead.
If everybody likes you, then you really don't have a brand. You want that specific niche of people. You don't want everybody to like you, because then you're trying to be too much to too many people, and that's never successful.
And people don't find that as trustworthy, in my opinion.
I don't know. There's a lot of people that come off on the internet as trustworthy that are really fake, and that doesn't help them either.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And that's the problem. I was just on a brand audit call right before this, and we were talking about how, you have to follow through. Like, you have to walk the talk. Otherwise, people are going to call you out. Like, the internet could be your best friend, but it could be your worst enemy too. And there's just too many people out there that are just jumping on the next bandwagon. And it's a shame, because it's funny, I just got a Facebook message from one of my old friends, and he was talking about how this webinar bubble is about to burst. where there's so many people doing webinars the same exact way. It's almost like we don't believe you. Like, we know what's going, and we know you're going to pitch me. So stop trying to call it a free web class, right? Yeah. Just say, hey, listen, I'm going to sell you something at the end of this, and whether you either are going to buy it or you're not. like it is what it is.
I've actually seen people do that right at the beginning. You know, at the end, there's going to be an offer. You know, this is what we're here for. And I respect them when they do that.
I was just going to say that. Like, how does that make you feel when you read an ad like that?
Well, at least they're coming out with the truth. You know, most of the time, one of my big pet peeves is you buy a program or something that promises you something, and all they give you is like 3/4 of it, and they give you enough to get you going, and they leave your ass hanging. You know, it's like, okay, now where do I find the rest of the information? You know, I paid money for this, and now I'm still don't have all the information.
And you're not alone, Scotty. That is a big issue that I think a lot of people are starting to bring to the forefront and to the light. And, you know, these fly-by-night type of marketers are really going to be in for a rude awakening once they start burning their bridges. And, like, that's what happens when you don't build a solid brand. I mean, you know, like, there was an old saying. I follow a guy, Ben Settle. He's like an email marketing. Like, he helps people build great email lists and helps them with their email marketing. And he was talking about like the top 5 things that he uses on a consistent basis. And he referenced this one guy, and I forget the name of it, but he talked about this particular guy talked specifically about letting your skeletons dance. Like, and so, you know, that term, skeletons in the closet, right? So when I heard this concept, let the skeletons dance, I laughed because I was like, you know, when people allow their skeletons to dance, it literally takes all the power from the haters and all the power from the people that want to bash him or bash her away from them. Because you're basically saying, listen, I know what I'm not good at. and I'm telling you that I'm not good at that. And so I'm not trying to play myself off as somebody else. And this is why I do what I do, because I know that I'm not good at X amount of things. Like, I'll give you a quick example. You know, and Pam, my project manager, who is just an amazing individual. You know, she knows when my anxiety level goes up is when I have 5 or 6 projects that are on the cusp of launching, and we got to still tie up these little ends, these little loose ends. And it drives me absolutely berserk because I'm just so anxious to get them launched, where I feel like I'm like out, it's like out of my control. One, maybe we're waiting for a client to send us one little piece of asset that we need to include, or we're just waiting on approval, or my team's got to figure 1 or 2 things out yet before and it drives me absolutely mad. But I'm just open with Pam about this because I'm like, you know where my anxiety goes. It goes where we're on the cusp of launching, and so she knows that, and she's like, Henry, relax, I got this. And so moral of the story is, like, my project management skills aren't as powerful as Pam's. And so I'm not trying to play myself off as a project manager. I'm trying to play myself off as the director, the art director, the brand director. And so I shouldn't even be getting involved in that, but I am because I'm so passionate about the project. But it just goes to show that, like, listen, I may not be a powerful project manager. That's why I have somebody that does project management. And so if somebody wants to call me out on social media about managing projects, I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, hey, listen, yeah, I know I suck at project management. That's why I have a team that covers that for me. And so just letting those skeletons dance is actually a feather in your cap, because it shows your authenticity. It shows that you're real. It shows that you're not good at everything. And it is what it is. Like, it really just gives them no legs to stand on at the end of the day.
I found out definitely, especially with video, when you're vulnerable, people connect with you a whole lot more. I mean, they relate. You're not trying to be fake. You know,
No.
they're so tired of the BS. People nowadays, you can't do the old school marketing stuff, you know, where you trick people and stuff. They're so far ahead of that nowadays with technology and everything. Right away, they'll tune you out. This guy's full of shit, you know. We're out of here, you know. So.
That's it. So listen, I got to wrap this up because I have a strategy call in 5 minutes, but I want to answer your last 5 questions. I want to answer your last question. What are my top favorite brands? I had to think about this because I like a lot of different brands, but I thought of the top 5 that are closest to me. One is the Gucci brand. I love the Gucci brand. They just have and here's why. Gucci can be very eccentric, but they can be very classic and timeless at the same time. I'm not really so much into the eccentric part of their brand, but I like their class, their timeless pieces, and there's a level of status along with all of these brands. So I like Gucci, I like Rolex, I like Range Rover, I like Mercedes-Benz, and I like the Gary Vaynerchuk brand. And there's as far as the Gucci, Rolex, Range Rover, and Mercedes brands, they all represent a level of status or a level of achievement. And so if I had to wrap all of them into a nice bow, I like all of those brands, not because I have them and I use them regularly, is because they have a level of achievement. So those brands mean something to me on an achievement level. So like, I'm a hard worker. I like nice things. So when I work hard, I can achieve those nice things. So those nice things represent achievement. So those brands represent achievement. And I just happen to like the Mercedes brands, their one-liner, which it's like the best or nothing. And I resonate with that. I resonate with that a lot. And so it's their positioning. It's Mercedes-Benz, Range Rover, their cars, they have 4 wheels, you know, they function the same way as a Toyota, but they represent the level of status. They represent a level of elegance, luxury, whatever. And that's what I resonate with, because that's the things that I like. And that's it. Like, I don't expect everybody to like those brands. And then as far as the Gary Vaynerchuk brand, his level of vulnerability, his level of enthusiasm, motivation, hustle, you know, those are all resonating with me. However, you know, him working 22 hours a day, never seeing his family during the week, doesn't, right? So I'm not going to be flying all over the world like he does, because my family means more to me than that. So there's some things that I like and dislike about Gary, but there's more likes than dislikes. And at the end of the day, Scotty, I see a lot of him in me, or I should say I see a lot of me in him. And that's why I like the brand. That's it. So, but listen, I appreciate you being a champ and stepping up and taking on the first hot seat call of the year. I look forward to doing a lot of these. We did quite a few of these last year under the different, group name, but I'm going to continue to do more of these because, again, you asking these questions, you're not alone. Like, I'm sure there's other people out there that want to know the process when it comes to clarifying your brand. And you had mentioned that to me a long time ago when we first met. You were like, I'm still trying to establish myself here. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. And, you know, I appreciate that honesty. I really do.
Well, eventually you get to a point you realize you got to get some help somewhere, you know, because the more you look into it and the more I follow you and several other people, all of a sudden the light bulb goes on that there's a lot more into this, and I'm way really over my head to create a professional brand. If I wanted to attract the type of clients and the right people, you got to come off as professional nowadays, and I can hack together some stuff, and I actually have, and I'm not very impressed with it. You know, maybe one of these days we got to talk to you. That's probably the next thing I need to get you to do a website review for me. You'll probably have a pretty good laugh at that. Maybe we'll start with that, and then we'll go from there. Let you tear me up on that. You know, I'm you know, that's how you learn. You know, I like I tell people, step on here, ask some questions, learn something, be vulnerable. You'll learn something, you know, and stretch yourself, because that's the only way you're going to grow.
I love that, man. I love that. So I'll leave it at that, because that was a great way to exit. Scotty, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on the Hot Seat Show, and have an awesome weekend. And I look forward to connecting with you inside the group and helping you build your brand in 18.
Thanks, Henry. It was fun.
You got it, buddy. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.